You've probably noticed that some people seem to move through life differently. They don't appear more motivated. They're not visibly working harder. But somehow, over time, their circumstances shift. Their skills compound. Their relationships deepen. Their options multiply. And when you ask them how they did it, the answers are often frustratingly simple. Small things, repeated often, nothing dramatic. It feels like there must be a secret, a strategy, a moment of clarity that flips everything. But what actually separates these people isn't a single decision or burst of inspiration. It's how their brain has learned to process uncertainty. Most people operate with what psychologists call an entity mindset. Your brain treats abilities, outcomes, and identity as fixed states. You either have something or you don't. You're either good at something or you're not. This isn't a character flaw. It's an adaptation. Your brain evolved to make rapid assessments, to categorize, to predict. When early humans encountered a predator, there wasn't time for nuance. The ones who survived were the ones who could instantly recognize threat and respond. That same system is still running. And it applies the same logic to modern challenges. When you fail at something, your entity mindset brain doesn't process it as information. It processes it as evidence. Evidence about what you are, what you're capable of, what's possible for you. Here's what happens neurologically. Your brain's reward prediction system calculates expected outcomes based on past experiences. When you attempt something and fail, there's a mismatch between prediction and reality. That mismatch triggers a forecast update. But in an entity mindset, that update doesn't just adjust the specific skill or task. It adjusts your assessment of your capacity in that entire domain. You try to learn guitar. You struggle with chord transitions. Your brain doesn't log this as, I haven't practiced chord transitions enough yet. It logs it as, I'm not musical. The category expands. The identity solidifies. What you feel subjectively is a quiet closing of doors. Not dramatic, not emotional, just a subtle shift in what feels worth attempting. You stop considering certain paths, certain careers, certain conversations. Not because someone told you no. Because your brain has reclassified them as incompatible with who you are. The hidden cost isn't just missed opportunities. It's that your brain begins optimizing for a smaller life. When fewer things feel possible, your nervous system relaxes. There's less to evaluate, less to risk, less uncertainty to navigate, and uncertainty is metabolically expensive. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's energy. Most of that goes toward prediction and error correction. If your brain can reduce the number of things it needs to predict, it conserves resources. So it does. The alternative is what researcher Carol Dweck called a growth mindset. But that term has been so overused and misunderstood that it's worth redefining from the ground up. A growth mindset isn't optimism. It's not believing you can do anything if you try hard enough. It's a different relationship with feedback. In a growth mindset, your brain treats failure as diagnostic data, not evidence about your worth, not proof of your limits, just information about what isn't working yet. This shift changes everything downstream. When you attempt something and it doesn't work, your brain doesn't update your identity, it updates your strategy. You try to learn guitar, you struggle with chord transitions. Your brain logs this as, the current practice method isn't producing the motor patterns I need. What variable can I change? The category stays open. The identity stays flexible. Neurologically, this activates different systems. Your prefrontal cortex stays engaged. It continues analyzing, testing, iterating. In an entity mindset, repeated failure eventually triggers threat responses. Your amygdala flags the activity as dangerous. Your nervous system starts associating the task with stress. In a growth mindset, repeated failure triggers curiosity responses. Your anterior cingulate cortex notices the mismatch between effort and outcome, but instead of withdrawing, it searches for patterns. What changed between attempts? What stayed the same? What hasn't been tested yet? This doesn't feel like confidence. It feels like patience. You're not sure it will work. You're just not yet convinced it won't. Here's the part most people miss. A growth mindset isn't just about skills or abilities. It's about identity itself. In an entity mindset, you believe you have a personality, a set of traits, a nature. You're introverted, you're impulsive, you're not a morning person, you're bad with money. These feel like descriptions, but they function as instructions. When you label yourself, your brain begins filtering experiences to confirm that label. It's not intentional. It's how prediction works. Your brain prepares you for the world it expects. If you believe you're not a morning person, your brain will ready your body for sluggishness when you wake up. It will make you more sensitive to fatigue cues. It will direct your attention toward evidence that mornings are hard, not to sabotage you, to help you. Your brain is trying to keep your model of reality consistent so it can predict accurately, but the prediction becomes the outcome. In a growth mindset, identity is provisional. You're not an introvert. You're someone who currently finds social situations draining. You're not impulsive. You're someone who hasn't yet built strong delay of gratification pathways. You're not bad with money. You're someone still learning how to manage competing priorities with limited resources. The difference is subtle, but it keeps the category open. What changes isn't your motivation. It's the number of possible futures your brain considers, and that changes what you notice. Your brain has something called a reticular activating system. It's a filter that determines what sensory information reaches your conscious awareness. You're surrounded by thousands of stimuli at every moment. Your brain can only process a fraction of them, so it prioritizes based on relevance. If you believe you're not creative, your reticular activating system won't flag creative opportunities. Not because they're not there, because they're not relevant to the future your brain is preparing for. If you believe you're someone still developing creativity, those opportunities become relevant. Your brain starts noticing them, cataloging them, connecting them to existing knowledge. You don't become more creative. You become aware of options that were always present. This is why small, repeated actions matter more than dramatic overhauls. Every time you attempt something outside your current ability, you're not just building skill. You're sending your brain a signal about what kind of future is worth preparing for. Here's what happens over time. Your brain notices that you keep attempting things. It notices that failure doesn't stop you. It notices that discomfort doesn't predict danger. Slowly, your threat detection system recalibrates. Activities that used to trigger avoidance responses start registering as neutral, then as normal, then as expected. Your baseline shifts. This isn't willpower. Willpower is a conscious override of your brain's predictions. It's metabolically expensive. It fatigues. What we're describing is updating the predictions themselves. When your brain predicts that struggle is part of the process, not evidence of failure, you don't need willpower to continue. You just continue. The hidden mechanism is repetition without attachment to outcome. Most people repeat actions to get a specific result. They practice guitar to get good at guitar. They go to the gym to lose weight. They read to gain knowledge. And when the result doesn't materialize quickly, the behavior stops. Because the behavior was never the point. The result was. But your brain doesn't learn mindsets from results. It learns mindsets from what you do in the absence of results. When you practice guitar and you're still bad, what do you do next? When you go to the gym and the scale doesn't move, do you go again? When you read something and don't understand it, do you reread or do you close the book? That's the data your brain uses to build its model of how the world works, not what you accomplish, what you repeat. This is why the most important repetitions are the ones that feel pointless, the days when progress is invisible, when effort feels wasted, when you're not sure it's working. Those are the days your brain is learning what kind of person you are, not from what you achieve, from what you sustain. Over time, this compounds quietly. You don't notice yourself becoming different. You notice that different things feel possible. Conversations you would have avoided feel manageable. Projects that seemed overwhelming feel like they have a next step. Uncertainty that used to collapse into anxiety starts feeling like space to explore. Your nervous system isn't more motivated. It's more calibrated. The trajectory becomes self-reinforcing. Not because you suddenly have discipline, but because your brain has reclassified what's normal, and normal doesn't require effort. It just happens. This is the version of you that emerges from those choices. Not dramatic, not sudden, but inevitable. Quietly built through repetition, through consistency, through the accumulation of mornings where you chose intention over impulse, where you practiced starting instead of responding, where you treated your attention as something valuable instead of something to be spent carelessly.